Hello everyone, my name's Harris Brooker and I am proud to show off this piece that I have written to the world. I am a naturalist at heart and love showing people nature, and I aspire to be able to do so on a world scale. There's no shortage of non-fiction on the subject, but I feel that to expand the pool of people interested in nature, I have to do something different. I am a great fan of education through entertainment, and that is what I have strived to do here. I have always wanted to recreate the lost world of New Zealand, and this was the perfect place to do it. I do apologise in advance if the names of the characters are difficult to keep up with. They are all Maori names and I chose each of them for a reason, but it's to keep the authenticity of the time. This story is set in 1381 during the Moa hunter-gatherer period. The wildlife you see here is all native to New Zealand, some still alive, some not. For authenticity's sake, I use the Maori names for the creatures depicted here, and also plants to a lesser degree. I also appreciate these may be unfamiliar. Things like harakeke plants, which are known as flax in modern times, wetas, which are large flightless crickets, and tuataras, large grey lizards the size of iguanas. Another example are huayas, which are referenced later on, which are a kind of wattlebird, which was sadly hunted to extinction in the name of fashion, namely their feathers in Victorian ladies' hats. I'm so excited to share this all with you, and I hope it goes a long way. So sit back, relax, and let me take you on a journey back in time over 600 years ago. Pouakai, a coming-of-age story in 14th century New Zealand, written by Harris Brooker, read to you by the author himself. The flies swarmed about the carcass, a big meaty sack of bones and feathers. Tui was not looking forward to the task at hand. He made a cut at the coat of feathers. They were thick and dense. No doubt they had served their owner well in life. They had to be removed before the feast tonight. This moa had been brought in this morning, a good-sized one, tall as the trees. It would feed most of the hapu. The meat on it was good, but only if there were no feathers. One's hapu is their sub-tribe, part of a much larger family called an iwi, all related to each other by kin. It was what kept the people together so that they could survive. Tui glanced across the clearing to look at the other boys, the men rather. They were laughing, still high-spirited from the hunt. There were 7 of them, but they all seemed to idolise Hunapo, the eldest, with his broad six-pack, muscles, blue circular tattoos on both cheeks, and long dark hair that seemed to look good either clean or greasy. It was because he was the son of Kaihautu, wasn't it? Being the son of the chief carried with it a great privilege, and privilege had a way of leading to ego. He was a hunter. A warrior too, even though he had never been to war. But that didn't seem to matter to anyone else, least of all to Maia. Maia. The name always gave him a tickle in his stomach and a hot flush every time he saw her, but also resignation. He loved Maia. Who wouldn't? Nearly every male, whatever their age, loved Maia. She was tall, slim, had a full mouth, long hair as black as earth, and eyes that sparkled like twin moons. She was the daughter of Akahata, the eldest warrior in the hapu, a healthy bloodline revered and envied for their ability to produce strong and beautiful children. He'd seen Hunapo hang out with her plenty of times, courting her, though nothing definite had taken place. Maia was no pushover. She had a bite to her as strong as a weta. Her strong will was the reason she had been without a mate for so long. She had turned 19 just yesterday. She had been eligible to have a mate for a year, but nobody could understand why she didn't pick anyone. Akahata was impatient to change that. Her father had wanted sons, but that hope had ended when his mate had died giving birth to her younger sister Marama. The reason Akahata didn't have a new mate was that there were few of his age, and any chance he'd had was ruined during a battle with a rival iwi. When outnumbered, he'd ignored a call to retreat. During the battle, a staff blow had smashed his groin. If he couldn't have sons of his own, at least he could have grandsons. And despite being incapacitated that way, Akahata was as keen for warfare as ever. It was all good for his mana. Then he saw Maia walking along, not seeing him, to join the boys. He spied the only other 2 he knew the names of. Hunapo's best friend Rawiri, and the youngest of them, Hunu, looking left out. Behind Maia was Marama, 4 years younger, shorter. She looked just like her sister, and in a few years would probably be comparable in beauty. "How are you getting on, Tui?" He looked over his shoulder to see Mother standing there, hands on hips. Just fine. She leaned closer. You've barely done any of it, Tui. I need help. The others are busy. I thought you would have made a better start than you have. You've had the whole morning, and now it's nearly afternoon. You need to work harder. She looked at the breast part that he'd already done. There's still more there. Get your flint and do it again. But mother, now! Tui ground his teeth. If you can do such a good job, why don't you do it? You need to learn these skills. It seems to be the only thing you can do. But I know what you want to do, and you'll never get there. Thanks, mother. Marama went for a wander. She was curious that way, always looking for adventure. The others were still laughing and didn't seem to notice she was away. Only Hunapo had seen her go away, but he'd done nothing. If anything, he seemed pleased. That was good. Her father had a way of curtailing her freedom, perhaps because of how Maia turned out. The forest was wet underfoot from last night's rain. She liked to look for wettas and whatever other bugs were crawling about. She ripped open a rotting log and several large hoo-hoo beetles scuttled away. Then out came a wetta. It thrust its legs backwards, raised high to ward off anything that might try to eat it. The bats could eat them, so could the tuataras, rurus and wekaus, but she had no wish to eat them. Wettas could bite too. If they didn't, she would have handled them like she did the beetles. She turned to see a tuatara watching the new bounty with interest. It snapped up a beetle in its jaws and crunched loudly. When it stared at her, it made her uneasy. The tuatara's broad bulbous head bore 2 large eyes. Its back was grey and ridged with scales. Its skin had deep folds across its body and was about the same length as Marama's forearm. Its mouth was closed in a blank expression, though Marama wondered if there was glee there. She spun round, paranoid. She heard a rustle of bushes. Something larger. She stopped, scared. There were other groups out there that could raid theirs if they wanted to. The tuatara watched her without blinking. You've done something. You've sent something. The bush rustled louder, and something came out of it. Marama held her breath. A large bird. She watched it come towards her, on 2 scaly legs. It had long toes with sharp claws. It was about knee-height, flightless, with grey feathers and a thick bill that curved downwards. It took a hoo-hoo beetle in its bill, gave it a juggle, and swallowed it whole. The tuatara stayed still. Marama could have reached out to touch the bird, grab it even, and take it back to camp for the feast. But she crouched there, watching. She'd never seen a bird like it before. It had a name, but she couldn't bring it to mind. Her father would know, since his hunting travels often brought him into contact with the strange birds of the forest. The bird looked up at her, quizzical in its expression. Marama reached out to touch it. Then it made some guttural sound and fled. She watched it go, confused. The tuatara sat there. She never heard it. Not the beat of wings, not even its shadow, until it was too late. She felt something slam into her back, hard as a rock. She screamed and felt a sharp grip. It tore into the back of her neck. A loud caw filled her ears. It tore at her ears until there were no ears. Her screams loudened. It was behind her, tearing, clawing, shredding, cawing, though she could no longer hear that. She felt the weight on her back. The claws dug deep. She could feel them tearing chunks of her flesh. She tried to run. The weight, the shredding. She fell face first and spat out dead leaves. Help me! Suddenly the weight lifted and moved to her front. The claws tore at her cheeks, clamped down, ready to pull them off. The last thing she saw was a muscular body and a head borne with a long, sharp bill. And then the claws found her eyes. Her screams were loud enough to wake the dead. All she could see was black and red. The weight transferred to her neck. Another slice. Her last wish was that it would all be over soon. I thought I heard it this way, shouted Hunapo. Marama, where are you? He couldn't hear anything now. His head spun, swimming like a river in spate. Then he heard a caw. This way! The others followed at his rear, spears at the ready. Then something massive hitched into the air and flew away. A spear whistled over Hunapo's shoulder and fell with a clatter. A few feathers floated. Marama! Hunapo ran towards the body. Marama! She looked like a carcass, with blood poured everywhere. Her dark hair matted. The flies had already found her, and when Hunapo turned her over, they all flew up in a sheet. He found a weta on her face, which he threw away. She barely had a face. It was lacerated beyond belief. Her ears were missing, and where her eyes used to be were only punctured holes. The tuatara was watching, unseen. Hunapo turned to the others. "Help me with her, all of you!" Uncle Ahi would have been proud. Father will have to change his mind now. Tui managed to get more of the moa hide off, but he had still done nowhere near what Mother had expected of him, and no one else had come to help. Then he saw Hunapo and the others carrying something between them. "Not another moa. I've barely made a start on this one." He couldn't quite see what they were carrying, though he thought it might have been a log, but it looked so pale, so red. "Get my father," said Hunapo. Tui abandoned his work, sensing something was wrong. Hunapo brought Marama's body into the camp and laid her next to the fire. From the shelters, the other residents emerged. There were screams and hands held over mouths. Some had already burst into tears. A line parted, and from between the residents limped a much older man, around 60 years old. His naked body sagged with skin. He had once been a good hunter in his youth, and had been a warrior. He was the chief of the Hapu, and his name was Kaihautu. He stared at the body. The others watched him in anticipation. "Out of my way!" Akahata barged his way through, with Maia behind him. Whatever anyone else's reaction, no one reacted as strongly as those two. Maia's screams came on psychotically, like she was in labour. Akahata pressed his daughter's face into his own and cried like a baby. He rocked her back and forth, just like one. "What happened? Hunapo, what happened?" Akahata's stare was a storm. "A Pouakai! It came! A Pouakai!" The word rippled through the Hapu like a terrible wind. "I don't know what happened exactly," said Hunapo. "We heard screaming. We ran. Couldn't find her. Then it flew away and then—" Akahata flew at him as if he were a Pouakai. "Why was she out there alone? I told her not to wander off. Was she with you?" "We barely saw her," said Hunapo. "We were celebrating the hunt. Maia was with us." Akahata swiveled to his daughter. "I didn't see her. I would have thought she would have been all right." "She went into the forest alone," said Akahata. "I don't care what you thought. You should never have let her go in there. I didn't think—" "I've told you 1,000 times. She could get lost, and the Pouakais are always on the move. We are prey to them, you understand. A child especially. They are strong enough to take down the moas. Anything they want they can have. How many times have I told you that?" "We can kill it, Father," said Hunapo. "You've done it before, haven't you?" "Once. A long time ago," said Kaihautu. "They are not easy to kill. I had to be patient, and even then I was lucky. Most people who have tried to hunt these fail. Either the Pouakai flies away or they are killed." "Then let us hunt this Pouakai with teamwork," pleaded Hunapo. "Please, Father. It would bring safety to the Hapu once and for all. We can all earn mana this way. We've lost 3 children in the last month. If I get it, you can make me chief, and I'll finish what my Uncle Ahi dreamed of." His father looked away from his son at that point. All eyes were on Kaihautu. Only the wind dared to interrupt. "Let us have a council this afternoon. I will consult with Marama. For now I think we need to calm down and process what's happened. We won't be able to make rational decisions until then." Marama was the oldest woman in the Hapu, and was said to have a wisdom that rivaled her chief's. She was at least 70 years old, with a thin wrinkled face, tanned as if having been in the sun for too long. She was the Hapu's healer and had supervised all its births. Tui, Hunapo, Maia, and nearly everyone else in their generation had been brought into the world by her. The afternoon could not come fast enough for anyone. The atmosphere around camp was palpable. There were so many voices, Tui struggled to hear what anyone was saying. Kaihautu silenced them just by walking in. "We have reached a decision. The Pouakai will be hunted, but Maia has a special announcement to make." Akahata ushered her in front of everyone. He kept offering to hold her, but she would shrug him away. "I don't need support," was something Tui heard. She stood there, eyes red with grief. The wind blew her earthy hair. "My father and I have spoken," she said. "I lost a sister today, my best friend. We have played together, climbed trees, climbed cliffs, looked at beetles for as long as I can remember. I miss her dreadfully, like I miss Mother when she passed. Mother died giving birth to her, and told me as she was dying to take care of her. I have failed to keep that promise. So to honour their memories and fulfil the wishes of my father, I have decided that any man who can kill that Pouakai and bring it to me, I will choose to be my mate." The wind blustered stronger than ever. It blustered harder than any mention of the word Pouakai. It seemed particularly blustery for the boys. For Tui, that wind blustered hottest of all. "Don't get any ideas, Tui. You won't be going after any Pouakais." That was Mother's words of encouragement. "But why, Mother? The others get to do everything. I don't get to do anything. Now's my chance to—" "The last time you went hunting with the boys, you complained of being tired the whole time, and when you got too close to a moa, you screamed and ran away." "I was taken by surprise," said Tui. I don't know, feel sensitive sometimes. The last time you went climbing with the boys, don't remind me. You cried and wailed the whole time and Kaihautu had to take you down on his back. Hunapo and his friends laughed at you. You said you never wanted to do this again. That's how I remember it. Thank you, Mother, for being so encouraging. I know just as much as the others do. I'm nearly a man now, but you're not a man. No, but you're not a man in any sense of the word. How can you? Tui, the answer is no. Now go to sleep. He threw his covers at her. I hate you, Mother. I hate all of you. I want to prove myself as well as anyone else. I love Maia. Maia will not choose someone younger than her. Shut up! What do you know? She said she will be the mate of anyone who can bring the Pouakai to her. If she says anyone, she means anyone. It will probably be Hunapo. He's strong and brave. You not so much. I am strong. I am brave. Tui threw a moa bone amulet at her. I don't have to listen to you. Since Father and Makareta died, you've become impossible. More than you were before. The blow came at him hard and fast, open palm to the cheek. Tui stared, pumped. You never loved me. He spun away from her and lay on his side. Makareta was the firstborn, the older one who Mother preferred. He had died on a hunting accident after he'd gotten too close to the back of a moa. That was 2 years ago. Now she seemed to devote all her bitterness towards Tui. But why, though? Everything had been hard. He tried his best at everything. Hunting, walking, climbing. He loved storytelling. Kaihautu would tell stories by the fire of how the world worked and how the gods and animals came into being. But he also told personal stories, and Kaihautu's stories were revered and envied by the younger men of the Hapu. It was true that he had killed a Pouakai in his youth. It was even said that he had hunted a giant moa alone using only a single short spear, and he had chased it into a trap and it tripped. He had a whalebone staff from a trip he'd made to the coast when he was only 17. Whales were difficult to hunt, but Kaihautu had been fortunate enough to find a beached whale. It had been considered a gift from Tangaroa himself. If only the gods gave him such fortune. If only a lot of things. If only Mother was kinder to him, believed in him, just because he found walking tiring, just because he struggled to learn things. He had been 13 by the time he'd learned how to light a fire. The others had mastered that skill at half his age. It was the same with tracking. Literally everything you could possibly learn, the others had mastered at a younger age. He couldn't take it anymore. He listened to make sure she was asleep, and when her snores told him she was, he got to his feet. He left the shelter. The fire was still burning, and most people were inside. But Kaihautu and Hunapo were there. Tui couldn't hear what they were saying, though he imagined it was probably a pep talk for tomorrow's hunt. Hunapo and Maia, a tale as old as time. The strongest and most beautiful mated together with the blessing of the iwi and the gods, the way things always were, where boys like him were made to have nothing. The thought of Hunapo and Maia together, bearing strong, healthy children for generations to come. If I were a hunter, a warrior, with muscle, chiseled features, the ability to make friends and could learn quickly. Kaihautu's shelter was right there. If he was caught, he didn't want to know what would happen. He needed weapons, a staff, a spear, a knife, anything. He had layers to put on. He had 3 moa hides. He needed those hides because while it was sweltering here in the forest, Kaihautu had always said that the Pouakais nested in the high mountains. He'd spoken of cold, wind-swept mountains with grass as sharp as knives. Then there was the snow, a white substance cold to the touch, and Tohiri could send heavy blizzards of it down onto the mountains as and when he wished. He knew where the mountains were, and presumably so did Hunapo. He had to get there first. He had to set off tonight. He felt himself going this way and that. Yes, no, can I manage this? The thought of Hunapo and Maia, the thought of him being a boy forever. You will never get there. She will never choose someone younger than her. He could barely see inside the shelter. The firelight didn't protrude much. There was only one hole for air, but that barely helped his vision. As his eyes accustomed to the gloom, he saw what looked like staffs propped up against the back. It was forbidden to touch anything belonging to a chief, much less take it away. It was tapu. It would anger the gods. The penalty was death. But then it's also tapu for a higher status person to touch the belongings of a lower status person. Not that anybody respects me like that. Hunapo and his friends had stolen possessions from him on several occasions. Tui's father knew how much his son liked collecting animal remains. He had once given him a penguin amulet, said to come from the man-sized penguins that lived on the coast. A rare item, and not one that many people who lived away from the coast possessed. As soon as word got out that he had it, Hunapo had stolen it and tossed it around to his friends, whilst Tui had tried to get it back. He never got the amulet back. Instead, Hunapo wore it and would flash it at Tui whenever he felt mean. When Tui complained to Kaihautu, the reprimand he gave his son wasn't as severe as he would have liked. He'd asked his son to return it, but he didn't. At least he no longer wore it and flaunted it at him. It certainly didn't change anything. Tui had a few of them. One of them was wooden, belonging to Hunapo. The other felt different, smoother. This was Kaihautu's staff, carved from the whale on the shore. It was smooth and polished. It fit snugly into Tui's hands. He found a short spear, wooden. He took that. He felt something else on top of the staff, like a ring, a feather headdress. Huaya feathers were reserved only for chiefs. But there were no Huayas in this land, so in the tradition of his ancestors, Kaihautu had gone back to his ancestral homeland to claim them, despite the presence of enemy iwis. It was a prized possession, irreplaceable. He heard shuffling. He tensed. As the shuffling came closer, he saw what it was. Hoapa, Kaihautu's kakapo. Kakapos are large green parrots that lived in the forest, but like the moas, they couldn't fly. They were a favourite food of the hapu, but they were sometimes considered as mokai, a pet one could own. Kaihautu had raised Hoapa as a chick, feeding him leaves and fruit. He was so placid, so friendly that when the time came to release him back into the forest, he didn't want to go. So he stayed. The children of the hapu adored him. They would pet him and tickle his feathers as if he were a dog. If this creature makes me a chief, I want him too. He heard voices behind him. He froze. His heart hammered inside his ribcage. They died away. There was another knife. This one was also of whalebone. He took that. I'm beginning to feel like a chief already. If Kaihautu or Hunapo found him in there, or if someone saw him leave. He scooped up the kakapo. He peeked outside the shelter and slowly emerged. Then he tiptoed away, trying not to move too quickly. He went back to his own shelter and took some flint and stashed some moa meat in his pouch, one made from harakeki plant fibres. Time to go. The darkness closed in around him. He followed the trails he knew by day, but by night they looked the same. A ruru hooted loudly. A wekau hooted further away. Rurus and wekaus were both kinds of owl. The ruru was a small rufous owl, barred brown with yellow eyes, and liked to hunt things like huhu beetles and wetas. The wekau was a larger, streaky brown owl, also with yellow eyes. They could hunt huhu beetles and wetas as well, but they could also take larger things. Frogs, bats, and even birds as large as kakapos. Keep going, put as much space between you and the camp as possible. Kaihautu will find out any time now that his whalebone staff, spear and knife are missing, not to mention his kakapo. The ache in his legs came back. His stomach rumbled. It felt as though his strength was dwindling the further away from camp he went. Ow, 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 want to stop, want to rest, need sleep, no, must keep going. His tears fell from his face. Where am I going? Is this leading the right way? To the mountains? To the Pouakai's eyrie? Must calm down. Hoapa followed behind him. Hurry up, will you? The kakapo tried his best, but he was too slow. For every stride that Tui took, Hoapa only managed 2 small steps. Tui paused, and realizing that Hoapa would likely get left behind, he lifted him onto his shoulder. Something burst from the undergrowth and trotted away ahead of him. It had no tail. A kiwi. That lifted his spirits. Food. Go and get the food. The kiwi ran ahead of him, morphing in and out of the undergrowth. Then when it re-emerged and sat on the trail in front of him, he hesitated. Perhaps it wasn't a good idea. He needed good luck. He remembered the story. It chased away his tiredness and hunger and lifted his spirits. The kiwi was Tane Mahuta's most sacred child. When a plague of insects threatened to devour the forest, Tane Mahuta had called upon the kiwi, the tui, the pakeko and the cuckoo for a council. He asked for one of them to save the forest from the plague. The tui had said it was too afraid. The pakeko didn't want to leave the reeds, and the cuckoo said it was too busy building a nest. That left the kiwi. Tane Mahuta told it to him the way it was. If you accept this task, you will never see the light of day again. The kiwi accepted. That was the reason he couldn't fly or see well. It was the reason he only came out at night. But he saved the forest from the plague. The tui wore 2 white wattles as a mark of its cowardice. The pakeko was banished to the swamplands forever, and the cuckoo never made another nest. The kiwi had saved it all. He felt uplifted, first in spirit, then in motion. He must have put his foot wrong somewhere. He fell. Hoapa went flying. He rolled down a slope, shrieking, face first into the leaves. His back rolled over some rocks before he came crashing to a stop at the foot of a tree fern. "Mother! Kaihautu! Help! Somebody please!" The forest answered with the din of insects. "Someone! I've twisted something and—" A wekau laughed. He tried to get up. "Ow!" He fell over. He glanced at his right foot, bent the wrong way. "I need help! Kaihautu, please! Anyone!" The wekau laughed again. He collapsed onto his bottom. "Why? Why me? Why is it always me? Why does everything bad happen to me?" The wekau had no response to that. Tui tensed. Hoapa! Where was he? He listened for the telltale shuffle of the kakapo's footsteps. Hoapa! There was no answer. That worried him. He pictured the wekau making a meal of him. All it would take was a swooping flight, a collision, and death. "Tane Mahuta! Tuma Twenga! Anyone please! I need you now! Just come and help me!" When no answer came, he let out the baby. He rocked back and forth in a fetal position. He screamed, bashed his fist against the trunk, bashed it again like he might fell it. The tears flooded. He convulsed as though struck by lightning. Hopelessness, pain, hunger, good old friends. If Maia could see me now. He made another attempt to walk. The agony shot through his shin like a knife. No, can't walk. When he had no more tears to shed, he sat back against the trunk. "I'll have to get back to camp somehow," he said softly. "Kaihautu will kill me, I'm sure. That's all right. I'm tired of this life. Maybe I should die here. Would Mother even cry for me the way she did for Makareta? She wishes it were me and not him." He shuffled himself. "I was never good enough for either of them. Father did try, but I just couldn't do it. Now he's gone and so is Makareta. And now it's just Mother. She hates me. I don't think I was the son either of them wanted, but it's what they got." He twisted to take some meat out of his pouch. It tasted firm and cold. He had some more, and more, and more, whatever it took. His throat felt like a parched rock. Now he was dreadfully thirsty. But there was little he could do about that. He made water where he sat. Then he heard shuffling and saw the dim shape of Hoapa walking towards him. The kakapo climbed onto his shoulder. Tui winced when he felt his claws dig into his flesh. Despite that, he was relieved to see him. I can't be a chief without him. He sat there. In the morning. Someone will find me in the morning. I'll give Kaihautu his weapons back. I'll give him back Hoapa. If I beg for forgiveness, maybe he'll let me live. He could barely hold his eyes open, and after a while he gave up. When he woke, the darkness was gone. The sunlight streamed through the trees. He felt something sharp. Ah! Get it off! A weta dropped from his face and lay on his lap. Its beady eyes stared up at him. He took the hideous creature by the antennae and flung it away. He felt something in his hair. When he brushed it off, he saw it was another weta. He found another in his loincloth. He tried to get up. His foot still hurt. He persevered. Couldn't quite stand properly. He crawled up the slope on his hands and knees. Ow, must keep going. No one here to help. Can't, no, must. He reached the top. He was about to go back the way he came. Something stopped him. If he went left, he would eventually reach the camp. But if he went right, camp, safety, food, water. No, mother, Kaihautu, can't. But food, water, safety, Maia. A hot, blustery wind took him. Maia! Oh no! What about Hunapo? Perhaps he and the others had already set out. Maybe they'd gone the right way. Maybe they'd found the mountains. Perhaps they'd even found the Eyrie. No, surely they haven't. Too far, not enough time. But then they were faster than he was. Even if they hadn't found the Eyrie, perhaps they were not far off. Perhaps Kaihautu knew where such a place would be, and perhaps they were following his precise instructions to get there. No, go back. It's pointless. You're hurt. This is stupid. If they haven't got to it yet, they will sooner than I will, and I have no clue where I'm going. Stupid boy. On my own. Hunapo would bring the Pouakai to Maia by tomorrow, or maybe the day after. Here I would be, wandering around on my own, still here in the forest. The Pouakais could hunt in the forest, but they did not live there. They could hunt whatever they wanted. Marama should have known that trees were no defence against a Pouakai. They could hunt everything that lived in the forest, even as smaller things as the kiwis and kakapos. They were huge birds with long wings, yet they could somehow negotiate the canopy. That was the frightening thing about the Pouakais. In the open or in the forest, you were never safe. He could be pounced upon even now. Remember what Marama looked like afterwards? No ears, no eyes, just a carcass. Akahata had said that they could hunt the giant moas, and they could grow as tall as the trees. Tui had never seen a Pouakai take down a giant moa, but Akahata and Kaihautu had told tales like that many a time around the fire. Those tales really scared him. But the worst nightmares came from his tales of children, women, and grown men falling prey. They were not strong enough to take the adults to their nests, but they could for babies. To the Pouakais, these were as light as the kiwis and kakapos. Anything bigger than them had to be eaten on the ground, and to feed their chicks they would have to tear small pieces at a time and go back and forth. Kaihautu had told him a story of a girl no more than 2 years old who had been carried away. She'd only gone 4 steps away from her mother and a group of hunters. Then a Pouakai had been on top of her. Spears had flown its way, but most of them missed, and the one that did strike true only took off a feather. It was that fast. The child had screamed manically, and then its mate joined it in the sky. They pulled the child together with their claws until she broke apart. All the others had managed to recover from her was a foot. Tui grimaced as he imagined what that little girl must have felt. The Pouakais had threatened the people for as long as people had ever been here. Kaihautu had told him stories of his people's arrival here, in Te Waka o Maui, when a mountain in the island to the north, Te Ika o Maui, had exploded with fire. Kaihautu's grandfather had made the journey south with his mate, 3 sons and daughter, along with the rest of his people. They'd sailed south to this land and had met hostile iwis and engaged them in battle. But the Pouakais had been a bigger shock to them still. How could the gods have created such monsters? Tui had believed that Tain Mahuta had purposely made them to keep man in his place. But Kaihautu had told him that Pouakais had always been here. There were stranger stories still, of how 100 years before their ancestors had come to both Te Waka o Maui and Te Ika o Maui in boats built for the ocean. But where from? Kaihautu had said something about lands beyond Te Waka o Maui, but even he didn't know their names. It seemed too much to believe. As far as Tui was concerned, he only knew this land. His father had hunted here. So had his grandfather. But surely at least one of them would have gone south to escape the exploding mountain, and an even further one would have arrived in Te Waka o Maui by sea from those nameless lands beyond. Make a decision. Go back. Go forward. He climbed back to the top of the trail. His legs still hurt, but it seemed manageable. No, go home. Go back to mother. Face up to your punishment, and if you don't die, you can go back to stripping moa hides. But that would mean no Maia. Tui hoisted his pouch up his waist and pressed on. Where are they? Kaihautu's wrath was a rare and terrible spectacle akin to a cyclone. A chunk of his shelter flew across the camp. Hoapa! My head crest! My staff, my spear, my knife, all gone." He swiveled to each of the faces around him. "If anyone here has taken these, own up now and your punishment will be less. Fail to do that and it's death." Mother came forward. "It's my son, Tui," though it was Hunapo that spoke. "He's always wanted your position," said Mother. "He wants to kill the Pouakai and have Maia. That's the only reason there is." "This is precious," said Hunapo. "I always thought he was a nobody, but this—" He had to cup his hand over his belly to stop him keeling forward. "I remember when Father had to bring him down from the cliff." This time he did keel forward. Mother didn't laugh, but she didn't display anger either. "Let me bring him back, Father. I'll kill the Pouakai, and I can kill him if you like." "Just bring him to me," said Kaihautu. "I will make a further decision." "Then you'll make me chief?" "You will not have it. I've told you." Mother, sensing tension, walked away. "But, Father, I'm your son. Your time is coming. You've said it yourself. It's the way." "The way can be changed. You've tainted your utu many a time. You are vain, impulsive, immature, and selfish." "I ran to Marama's aid," said Hunapo. "One good deed, the rest not. Even then you only thought of Maia." "But that Tui, Maia is all he thinks about too. That and your position. Why else would he take what's yours? Because he can't earn it himself. He's a nobody. His Wakapapa has always been weak. His strongest died too close together. We're still here. Our mana is the best, and when I combine it with Maia's, it will be stronger." One's Wakapapa was everything. It contained all your ancestors. Then there was your mana, the power and prestige that's passed from parents to children, that gave everyone their place not just in the hapu, but in the iwi. Some had a lot more than others. It all depended on you and the deeds of those in your Wakapapa. Utu, on the other hand, was the culmination of the deeds one could do for others, and one that both Tui and Hunapo had struggled with the most. "Tui has poor mana and poor Utu," said Hunapo. "He is no one. Just bring him to me and I'll deal with him myself. And if I can kill the Pouakai, what do you think? I can have Maia? If she'll have you, yes. But you won't have my position, not even when I'm dead. I forbid it." Hunapo glanced at Akahata. The old warrior offered no support. Hunapo and his friends set out later that morning. Hunapo's pace was shorter, less purposeful than it was. He began to wonder how far Tui had gone, then dismissed the idea, feeling that he would never succeed in bringing back the Pouakai. The worry resurfaced a second later, milder. He'd done everything his father had asked him. Was there nothing he could do that would change his mind? What had been the point of everything he'd ever done, if only for it to count for nothing? Their progress was slow. The others could have moved faster than Hunapo, but their subconscious minds made their pace drop to his. Why is my father doing this to me? Doesn't he love me as his son? Can't he see my ambition, my drive to have more, the wonder that I am? If he let me become chief, I would expand our range like my uncle Ahi tried to do before. He failed. But I don't understand why we never tried again. We have twice the manpower than we did 15 years ago. If I was in charge, I would try again. He stopped so suddenly the others walked into him. He remembered seeing something important here before. The bushes on either side were thick and luxuriant, draped with mosses and lichens. "What are we doing now?" asked Rawiri. "Just stand and listen for them," said Hunapo. "Listen for what? Just be quiet." Hunapo's heart began to sink. He needed a sign of approval. If he couldn't get it from his father, perhaps he could get it from the gods. "Wawachi! Wawachi! Wawachi!" "There you go." A smile spread across Hunapo's face. "But it's coming from the left," said Rawiri. The tieke dropped down onto a low branch. Its brown colour told Hunapo it was a young bird. Then two black-bodied adults bearing red wattles joined it and regurgitated something into its mouth. When they turned to see the humans watching them, they paused, as if taking time to assess them. They flew over to their right-hand side, called briefly, then disappeared, though they could still hear them as they moved through the trees. "Now they're on the right," said Hunapo. "It doesn't feel right," said Rawiri. "Are you deaf as well as blind? They moved to the right when they saw me. It's a good omen. For what? For going in there. But that leads to, I know where it leads and we're going there anyway. What about the Pouakais? Tui is hunting them as we speak." Hunapo felt a flicker of fear. "I wouldn't worry about that. He's probably lying dead somewhere. If they find us, I'll handle that. How can you, Rawiri, I don't want to hear any more. But Hunapo, at least 2 others tried to be heard. That goes for the rest of you. Everyone fell silent. Hunapo cast a glance at Hunu. I don't think much of him. I don't even know why I let him tag along, but at least he doesn't argue. We are crossing over to their territory. The gods have given us a good omen. I have a plan. What plan? To get my father's position. Now that's enough. They came to a clearing and saw a group of people huddled around what looked like a dead moa. Hunapo jumped. These hunters were busy laughing and joking and helping themselves to the meat. Hunapo called out to them. They looked up, stiffened. He raised a hand to warn his friends to hold fast. The enemy iwi started to shout, make faces, parade this way and that. Their haka was a fearsome spectacle. No matter where you were from, this was the universal signal to show you one's strength. You could accept their challenge and fight. But there was an alternative. We come in peace, said Hunapo. He laid down his weapons and gestured for the others to do the same. Who's in charge? Out of the dozen hunters came a springy, sinewy young man, a similar age to Hunapo. His hair was thick and black. His tattoos covered every inch of his skin. His nose was pointed and hooked, not unlike a Pouakai's. His name was Taika. What are you doing in our territory? Your father made peace with us after our last war. Have you come to break it? We are after a Pouakai that killed the sister of someone I love, said Hunapo. She says she will choose the man that kills it. But I wanted to speak to you for another reason. What reason? I would like my father's position, but he won't give it to me. Not even after death. I don't think there's anything I can do that will change his mind. So I have a deal for you. If I come back from this quest and he still doesn't move, I want you to back me up. And what will we get in return? Access to our land, moas to hunt. There will be mana and utu for everyone. Land, moas, mana, utu, all good. There is something else I want. Women. Hunapo didn't expect that. It intrigued him and Taika seemed to sense it. Sickness has taken 12 of ours. Others have died in childbirth. One fell from a cliff. The others are old. Then you shall have women. I only want one. They say she is tall, with black hair, and fierce. Hunapo scratched his head. There were at least 40 women in the hapu, but only one that was like that. That sounds like Maia. You can't have her because she's mine. Yours. We're not paired together yet. I'm looking to kill the Pouakai to win her. Taika frowned. You will give me Maia or we will not help. Hunapo stared. What an impasse this was. You can have any of the others, said Hunapo, but Maia is mine. Then we don't help. You can't take the woman I want. You share or we don't help. Share? If I cannot be the mate of Maia, share her with me. At least once. Hunapo wondered how the hapu's peace could possibly be kept if he agreed to this. He didn't want to share. He didn't want another man's mana mixed with the same woman. Maia would never agree, that was a given. But there was no way he could accomplish this alone. He would have to share. Or would he? Hunapo somehow managed to hide the sparkle that glowed to life inside him, which was a feat in itself considering it came on fast. He would have Maia, the hapu, moas, more mana and more utu than he could possibly imagine. But it wasn't just Maia that he didn't want to share. He didn't want to share his hapu's land or its resources, but he would take Taika's. Kaihautu had said it was a vast area of mountains, forests and rivers stretching right towards the coast. There were shellfish, seals, seabirds, whales and dolphins. There were said to be penguins as tall as men. There were moas there, and there were said to be more of them there than there were in Kaihautu's territory. Indeed, there would be more of everything there. Taika's iwi controlled most of the access. It was an area Kaihautu's brother Ahi had tried to take once before, but their numbers were too strong. Kaihautu had no wish to try again. He often spoke about how he enjoyed not fighting anymore. That meant the peace between the two iwis had lasted. Hunapo considered. He needed the manpower. Done. Thank you everyone for listening. It is such an honour to share this first part with you all. Check back on my channel for news of the next part. Don't forget to subscribe, click the like button and spread the news. I have also enclosed the link to my novel, World Warrior, an action-packed nature adventure set in Florida about an autistic teenager with a flying machine, a love interest and a criminal empire in need of defeating. Thank you all again, and I'll see you next time.